the lie that certain people in America are incapable of personal decision making. We're not talking about people who have some sort of actual disability. We are talking about simply based on your race. You are incapable of making a decision for which you can be held responsible. This is now implicit in so much of left-wing talking points. And the most obvious place in which this is implicit, it's not even implicit, it's almost explicit, is the way the left will talk about voting. So right now, the left's case is that any Republican attempt to create a regimen of voter ID, where we can actually verify where you are from, or to limit in some way early voting, this is somehow racist. The idea implicit here is that somehow this is going to directly affect black people specifically. Why? Are black people incapable of getting a voter ID? That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Are black people incapable of voting on the day of elections? Of course not. What exactly is racist about seeking better voter verification standards? And so based on this original lie, what you will see piled up are more lies, right? So the original lie is that certain people in America are not capable of making certain decisions, which is not true. And then rooted in that lie, you'll see lies about the policies that are being promulgated. Stacey Abrams, of course, has been a big proponent of the idea that massive voter suppression is happening across the country. This is simply not the case. There is not massive voter suppression. It's amazing. Throughout 2020, we kept hearing that Donald Trump was saying things that were untrue about voting, about voter fraud and voter irregularity. And I said, okay, well, he has to provide proof of voter fraud and voter irregularity if we are going to believe that. The media agreed. Okay, but then the media would say voter suppression is widespread. It's happening across the country. There is no evidence of widespread voter suppression in the United States. This is not a reality. Black Americans overrepresent their percentage of the population in a wide variety of swing states when it comes to voting. The notion that Georgia was being victimized by voter suppression is a lie. The notion that voter suppression was taking place in 2012 or 2016 or 2020, it's not true. But the media pushed that narrative. Why? Because the idea was that if they didn't get their way, it must be due to America's racist systems. It's always the racist system that is depriving certain individuals of choice, even though in a free country, people are capable of the choice. So you see Stacey Abrams out there suggesting that we're seeing an onslaught on voting in this country, thanks to, for example, Georgia law. So Georgia's new law is not an onslaught on voting in this country. Georgia's new law is actually more lax on early voting than, say, New Jersey. Georgia's new law does not prevent people from voting. It does not prevent people from drinking water in line. It does not prevent people from being able to obtain a ballot. It doesn't do any of those things. And yet the argument from the left is that it is designed to stop black people from voting because somehow black people are, incapable of jumping through the very basic hoop of getting an ID? I don't think so. Here's Stacey Abrams pushing it anyway.
We deserve to have a say in the direction of our nation, in the direction of our states, and in the direction of our communities. And when democracy is undermined by laws that we have seen pass not only in Georgia, but in Iowa, and laws that are under consideration in Arizona, in Texas, in New Hampshire, in Florida, in 43 states across this country, we are seeing an onslaught, an attack on democracy.
That is a lie. It is not an attack on democracy. It is not an onslaught. These are very simple verification procedures. And Democrats want to undermine all of those. That's what the so-called For the People Act is all about, this H.R. 1. It is all about undermining voter verification procedures. Okay, so recognize the actual agenda, which is to loosen voting procedures so that fraud actually becomes more common and the possibility of fraud becomes more common, and ballot harvesting, which I think is one of the most nefarious things in American voting, becomes the rule of the land. That's the actual goal. But in order to push that goal, they're going to continue to foster the lie that these measures are aimed at stopping black people from voting and or black people are incapable of voting if you put these conditions in place that are equally applicable to everyone. How stupid are these lies? They're so stupid that even the Washington Post, which is a left-wing outlet, is now fact-checking these lies. Joe Biden suggested that the new Georgia law, quote, ends voting hours early, that it suppresses voting. He got 4 Pinocchios for this because it's not true. Okay, on election day in Georgia, polling places are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you're in line by 7 p.m., you're allowed to cast your ballot. Nothing in the new law changes those rules. That didn't stop Joe Biden from going out there and saying that this initiative is, quote, un-American and sick. He said, quote, deciding that you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off work. Among the outrageous parts of this new state law, it ends voting hours early. Okay, none of this is true. It is not true. University of Georgia political scientist Charles Bullock says you can criticize the bill for many things. I don't think you can criticize it for reducing the hours you can vote. So he's just telling things that are openly untrue at this point. The Washington Post tries to make excuses for Biden, but it's a lie anyway. And there's an overall lie. Okay, the overall lie, again, is that these voting verification laws are designed to prevent black people from voting. It is not, or that black people are incapable of fulfilling these particular promises. This is not the case. But again, this is the line. How prevalent are these lies about Georgia's voting laws, for example? They're so prevalent that Jamel Hill, who somehow continues to fail up, she started off at ESPN, lost her job at ESPN. Now she's over at The Atlantic, which is supposed to be some sort of highfalutin intellectual magazine, which of course it is not. She has a piece titled, "Sports Should Boycott Georgia." So now, because she doesn't like the law in Georgia, because it is, quote unquote, supposedly racist, this means that now all sports should boycott Georgia. Right? The politicization of everything along the basis of these lies is pretty astonishing. It truly is. And the attempt to craft all of American life around the lie that laws that are equal in applicability and do not victimize black Americans, actively victimize black Americans because somehow black Americans are incapable of making basic decisions, that lie is now being embedded in every area of American life. It's being embedded in corporate life. It's being embedded in sports. It's being embedded in government. It's being embedded in Hollywood. It's all embedded. People are not responsible for their own decisions because America is such a terrible racist place. So Jamel Hill says that she now wants sports organizations to boycott the state of Georgia. She says in the past, major sports organizations have forced other states to reconsider infringements on their citizens' rights. And that kind of pressure is sorely needed in Georgia now. Last week, Georgia's Republican governor, Brian Kemp, signed an elections bill Joe Biden has described as Jim Crow in the 21st century, which shows you what an insane lie that is. Jim Crow explicitly created a separate system of law for black Americans and treated them as inferior. There's nothing in the law like that. That's not only an overstatement, it's just an outright lie. But, says Jamel Hill, all of corporate America should resonate to the lie. The law imposes new voter identification requirements for absentee ballots. Well, clearly that's racist. I mean, you mean you have to show that you are who you say you are when you vote absentee? If you can explain to me how that's racist, I'm willing to hear it. Anyone? Bueller? It limits the use of ballot drop boxes. Oh, you mean like ballot drop boxes where people could just stuff the ballot box or take ballots out of the ballot box? It hands state officials more power over local elections. Even before the legislation passed, many voters of color in Georgia faced hours-long queues at the polls. By the way, voter suppression doesn't involve long lines. Any more than long lines at Disneyland are ride suppression. You know what voter suppression is? Voter suppression is where you don't get to vote. Making those waits even more arduous, the new law bans giving food and water to people in line to vote. That's not even true. It bans giving any gift to people in line when they are within 150 feet of the polling place. You can bring water with you. There are people outside who can give you water. This is just not true. Okay, so again, the root lie here is the one that is being pushed forward. And it's being pushed forward in every area of American life. People are not responsible for their own actions, whether we are talking criminal behavior or whether we are talking about voting law. People are not responsible for their own behavior so long as we can continue to forward the narrative that America is deeply racist. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.